Our first caller is Barry. And Barry, go ahead and tell us what you want to talk about and then say who you want to answer first. So what's up, Barry?
Am I on? Oh,
you are on. It's
hi.
Barry from New Zealand. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good. I was just going to say, if this new format works with you guys, you could just keep adding more and more hosts and it'll look like a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah, dude. It's going to be a whole Avengers situation. We're just going to get everybody on. It'll be great.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Probably MD aware for this one.
Okay. Go for it. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, okay. This was about 5 years ago. A bit sad, really. My father had a brain tumor, and eventually they realized it was terminal. So we took him to a hospice. And while they were setting him up in the room, I stayed out in the corridor and I started reading a pamphlet, an introductory sort of pamphlet. And it said, here's a list of indicative behaviors that this person is on the way to dying, like they're about to die. And some of them were very, very specific and I thought a bit strange. So I read it and I was a bit cynical. I thought, I can't believe this. And I put it away. Went into the room. Dad was all nicely set up. And me and the rest of the family spent the rest of the day with him, To be honest, half the time his eyes were glassy and it was as if he wasn't really there anymore, But every now and then he would sort of, a little life his old self would come back. Well, anyway, after a few hours, he suddenly sat upright and they gave him a little table and he started folding this towel very meticulously into squares. And that had been one of the things that I'd read in this pamphlet, that's something that they do at this point. And it was as if everything in the whole world was just centered on this towel. He'd put all his energy, physical and mental, into getting this task done, So that was one of the things in the pamphlet, and that spooked me. Then later on, towards the evening, he suddenly, again, he just got up from a reclining position, took a lot of energy, you could imagine, and he wanted to go for a walk. Now, this apparently is such a common behavior that they actually had sensor mats around the bed so that it would set an alarm off so the nurses would come in. It happens so frequently. And that's exactly what happened. He suddenly said something like, I've got to go somewhere, or whatever it was he said. He was whispering, but he actually vocalized it. The nurse came rushing in, sort of pushed him back down. She gave him some morphine, and basically he died later that night, early hours of the morning. And that freaked me out because that had also been on the pamphlet. And I'm thinking, one, what is going on in the person's head that they have to do these things? And it obviously happens so often that they can write a pamphlet about it. How do they know? Like folding a towel? How do they know this stuff? So that's my question. What are your thoughts about this?
So I've never heard of this towel one. There are a lot of things that people do when they're towards the end of life. Some of the stuff you describe is associated with delirium, which is just sort of a state of decreased consciousness, decreased awareness, that sort of thing. And it comes with disorientation and the desire to get up and walk around and sort of exit-seeking behavior. That can be part of it. There's a lot of behavior and things that happen, things that like physical changes that people go through while they are nearing the end of life that are very reproducible, and they're well documented, right? And it sort of happens to everyone. It gets down to some of our fundamental reflexes that are built into us from an evolutionary perspective. So I haven't heard of the towel one, but a lot of the other ones are very related to our our underlying reflexes to move and survive, and those those things sort of deteriorating as people approach the end of life. And some of those are very, very reproducible. We see them all the time. But I'll have to look into this towel one. I haven't heard that one before or seen it.
Puck, did you have any thoughts?
No, I'm gonna punt. I have no real good experience with this. And I imagine that the people who do spend more amount of time studying this would want to put something together to say, here's what you can expect if you have a loved one who's in the hospital. So no, I've never heard of anything like this. It's intriguing to look up. There's no way I could meaningfully look this up in the time that I had here, but now I definitely want to look into it a little bit more. So thank you very much for bringing this up.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing on that. I would say I have no idea either, but it is kind of fascinating to see that these behaviors are so predictable that somebody can write a pamphlet about it to help you out like in that time. I think that's really curious. My grandmother unfortunately passed away last year, and I never had a lot of family I'm very lucky in the sense that not a lot of human family anyway that's died in my life. And when she was close to her end of life, she was talking a lot about her childhood home back in Maryland, and was talking about kind of almost like she wasn't there in the room. She was kind of there in another place and wanted to travel and get up and walk around and go places. So it's kind of similar in that sense. I wonder why that is. It's I very much of the opinion that humans are kind of like computers, and we're probably just short circuiting and shutting down at that point. And that's probably what was happening to her. She was getting to some recesses in her brain that made sense for her at that time, and that's really all there is to it. And unfortunately, people take these experiences and extrapolate them into, well, that's because she was talking with God or she was doing all this. And I obviously don't believe that, and I know you don't either, Barry, because I know you've called into the show before. But it is fascinating to see how weird people are at towards the end of their life. But Erin, did you have any comments on that?
Just a little bit more like to what you had all mentioned before. I have had some experiences with being with somebody near the end of their life, and I have family members who actually do work in the hospice area, and they've talked about these things, and there is like a lot of reported instances of like this kind of strange behavior as someone is like nearing the end of life. And some of it is like bodily function, like MD Aware had mentioned, like their body is starting to that process of shutting down, but then also like psychologically and behaviorally, there are a lot of commonalities that are kind of, you would think that it's kind of just an anomaly until you were to hear that they've kind of gathered this info and they can give you some actual like predictions about how somebody is going to behave in those last few days too. So I'm not that surprised by it, actually. Like the folding, I'm not sure what the specific reasoning is for the folding of the towels, but like people do in the last few days before they pass away, there is some behaviors that come up that are kind of indicative to something that maybe from their childhood or from their important stages of their life, or something that actually brings them some sort of comfort, or like there are these things like that. And it's really fascinating to me. I'm not sure exactly why that would happen, but I've heard it explained that our bodies and our brains specifically are kind of there to try to protect us, and in a lot of ways maybe even protect us emotionally. So I think sometimes bringing back that like anything that causes kind of comfort or structure in those like last few days, it doesn't surprise me all that much that maybe somebody's behavior would go towards that near the end. So
sort of like a soothing behavior almost.
Almost like a self-soothing behavior. So there is a lot of actual research and documentation that's gone into this. You can go read about it on different hospice societies websites, and I'm not surprised that there's a pamphlet for it. I think the pamphlets do give people a little bit of comfort knowing that when their loved one is acting in these kind of bizarre ways in the end, that it's all part of the process, and gives people a little bit more like they don't feel like they need to maybe figure it out as they're experiencing it, because they've had a little bit of awareness that your loved one could act like that in the end. So I find it interesting always to hear about how each person's experience is different, but it's definitely not weird.
It's unfortunate because there's probably going to be a lot of things we won't know for a long time, right? Because for most people, it's pretty unethical to hook somebody up to an MRI machine while they're in the last stages of their life. And so because of obvious things like that, it's harder to study people at their end of life. But maybe there will be things we'll know in the future. I don't know, but it's a great call, Barry. Thanks so much for sharing that with us. And it's definitely an interesting topic to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Thanks again, Barry, for calling in.